We're going to actually go ahead and get started. Unfortunately, we had one of our panelists get stuck. Anybody who's flown recently, coming back home is pretty challenging. So one of our panelists actually can't make it this morning. Definitely sends his regards, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Robert Sanders, principal owner of Sanders Development Group. Man, that light is bright. Principal of Sanders Development Group. I started Sanders Development Group in 2019, and we focus on large-scale mixed-use development projects. Most recently, we relocated Triversity Construction's headquarters to Walnut Hills. So we own 30,000 square feet of real estate in Walnut Hills. We actually own our first piece of real estate in the Central Business District right across the street here. We own a building in a parking lot. And we're the development partner on FC's mixed-use $300 million development deal. And we're just doing work across the city. We do a lot of support for community development corporations to do community development work in the city. And we're just excited to be the moderator on this panel. Enough about me. This panel is geared around ideation and, what do I do if I have an idea around development? And I'm excited about the panelists that we have at the table today, and I'll let them talk about themselves, but we've got Michael Golden from Penrose, who I actually worked with at the Port Authority, so it's pretty great to see him actually in a different role in commercial real estate development. And then we've got Kai Lewers of Kiker Development and Construction here, and Kiker's doing a lot of great things in the Avondale community. And why don't you guys take a second to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about what your company does, and I'm sorry.
Quick audible. We are missing a panelist, so we're going to bring up the lovely Miss Renee Jefferson.
Awesome.
To add a little bit of diversity to the panel.
Welcome, Renee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
So I'll start with you, Michael. Just introduce yourself and talk about what your company does.
Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here today. My name is Michael Golden. I am an associate real estate developer for a company called Penrose. We are a national firm based out of Philadelphia, but I work out the Ohio office. And I cover the real estate development activities throughout the whole state. Here locally, we have 3 projects currently going on. The first one is in College Hill, our Hannahby project at the intersection of North Bend and Hamilton Avenue. We have a project going on in Northside, one of the first LGBTQ affirming senior housing developments. And then we have a project going on in Walnut Hills neighborhood, 50 units of family housing. Over at Penrose, I'm kind of responsible for, hey, we have an idea. Let's find out how we're going to finance it. Let's build it. Let's move people in. And I'll get a little bit more into that as the conversation goes on.
Kai?
Hi, my name is Kai Lewers. I'm with Kiker Development and Construction. We've been operating since 2015, originally from Portland, Oregon. Coincidentally, our guest Renee here sold me one of my first properties prior to me moving out to Cincinnati. So that was a great experience. I purchased a multifamily unit from her, did the development work, transitioned it into 2 single-family townhomes. But outside of that, my company does a lot of high-volume residential, like commercial tenant build-out work, specifically development and construction management services. Less on the financial side. That's where Rob's expertise truly is. He makes the magic happen. But our team facilitates CM services and construction services, a team of 16 currently, and our office is located downtown on Central Parkway.
Renee?
Good morning. My name is Renee Jefferson. I am with Blue Lemon Rentals. And like Kai said, I sold him his first development project, which I was actually going to do. And then from there, I decided to build. So I built my first project up on Site Street. There was a lot that went into that. So what I did is I just decided like, hey, maybe my next thing is to do some development. So from there, I just wrote down a plan and assembled a team and got financing, and that's kind of where we started. Aside from that, I also do Airbnb, short-term and long-term rentals. I am also an author. I do a few different things. So I'm looking to get into some more projects right now, either in the city of Cincinnati or Tampa, where I currently live. So yeah, I think that's it. I have a few things going on, but they just grabbed me from the other room, and I was not prepared. So I was like, okay, I'll just get up here and tell you what I know. So that's it.
Thanks for pivoting for us, Renee. We really appreciate it. So one of the things that I believe is important, because sometimes you look up, and this was asked of me last night. You look up and you just see people in development, and it's like, wait, I think it's important to understand, like, how did you actually get into the space? Because there is no one true path. If you talk to employees of development companies, I'll bet you ask 10 people, they'll have 10 different paths in how they got into development. And so if you will, Michael, why don't you share how you actually got into the development space? And again, I think it's important to note that Michael was initially an employee, entry-level employee at the port, and now is doing larger scale development deals. So talk a little bit about that path and actually your why, if you will, in development.
Absolutely. So just from an educational standpoint, I went to Ohio State University and got my degree in public affairs.
OH.
IO. So with that, throughout my different experiences, my first track was actually to get my master's degree in higher education and student affairs with a focus on retention of student of color. But through my different lived experiences and just through mentorship opportunities, I kind of really hit a lot of different themes on. I still love education, but how the built environment impacts people from the day-to-day basis. Where do I have access for safe, healthy housing? Where am I shopping? Those different things that sometimes we take for granted. And I took a random class, Social Just City, and it taught me about redlining, zoning, or different policies that impact us on the day-to-day. I was like, wow, what is this? And how can I get more involved? So I got my master's degree at the University of Cincinnati in community planning. And really, that it was interesting because I was still dabbling in that educational space, but I have felt more of a calling to understand, how do you get into real estate development? My dad also has some different real estate properties back when he was younger. When I was younger, he had me swinging, painting walls and all that stuff, and I was like, I don't want to do that. I know I don't want to do that, but how do I learn how I can engage in this space? So I looked up, I got a job at the Port of Greater Cincinnati working with Deborah Robb through the Homesteading Urban Redevelopment Corporation, rehabbing single-family homes. And that was an amazing experience because you see things on TV where you rehab a house in 5 months. I'm like, that's not real all the time or at all. So I learned a lot in that experience, but the common theme for me was I saw a lot of people in the real estate space that didn't look like me at all, and I wanted to figure out how I can play a role to learn that, but also pay it forward and work with other people to get into the real estate development space too. But part of that is me pushing myself out there to get into that experience. So long-winded way to say, the port was a great opportunity and I learned a lot, but I wanted to really dig into how do you do these larger scale development projects that are very complex, and unwrapping that and learning that. So that's a little bit about me and my background.
Awesome. Kai, before you respond, I got to let people know, when I was working on my first development deal, I walked into my development partner's office, and Kai is actually on the floor nailing some stuff and doing some TI work in the office. And he reached out and said, hey, I've actually been wanting to meet you at some point. And where he is today is just kind of amazing. So talk a little bit about that journey, Kai, if you will.
Yeah. So similar to Michael, my educational background, I went to Polytechnic High School. I majored in architectural drafting. I realized that being behind the draft board or computer all the time wasn't something that I wanted to spend my 9 to 5 doing, but I definitely appreciated the craft and understanding how to put together those components to create the builds. And then from there, I was actually drafted, in a sense, to Oregon State and their construction engineering management program, and that was like heaven on earth for me, because construction management was one of those things for me where I didn't have to be the mechanical engineer or electrical engineer or architect. I could understand different components of that, but me being who I am and what I do best, it was like being able to coordinate those things, manage those things, build on those things, work on people's strengths, and put it all together. So went to Oregon State, did construction management, business management, got into the industry. I have a special guest here today. It's my mom. She came all the way from Portland, Oregon. One of mom's requirements every time, summertime, you're in college, you want to party, you want to go travel, you want to hang out. No, my mom's a teacher. Boy, you're not coming home unless you have an internship. So I didn't come home unless I had an internship, and I'm forever grateful to that because there are some kids who may have been singularly focused on academics. I had several other things going on. I was a young father. I have a 15-year-old boy, and at the time, he was born my second year in college. So it was one of those things where my mother really helped me stay focused. My son helped motivate me, but putting myself in a constant place to continue my education and focusing in that direction is really what helped me kind of develop where I'm at today. So working for other contractors, I was the project manager of Portland Public Schools, the largest school district in Oregon, where my mother taught at. My son went to school, I was taught at, so it was wonderful. I was coming back building schools. But even then, I just had more to give, more to do, and if you know me, I really love construction development, and I was tired of seeing all the HGTV developers, and I was like, man, if they're doing that, I can do it, and they're doing it, and they're not as organized, they don't understand the means and methods and details associated to make that 5 months a reality, you know? So I started doing that in Portland. Price point was ridiculous. Had a lot of people from California moving up, and my connection to Cincinnati was my dad. And my dad was here. He had established himself. He had some multifamily real estate, and he was like, hey, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Come out here, play around. And that's when I found about Renee. I purchased about 4 properties. One of those were hers, and started turning those over and connecting the story to where I met Rob. I hit that plateau in my own company where I was boxing myself in a corner that I didn't want to be in. And traditionally, I would say a lot of small businesses, minority businesses, we do that naturally without knowing it, in a sense of just taking work, just to take work to survive versus taking work to do what you strive to do or what your potential truly is. So I was able to recognize that early, fortunately, and I stepped back and I took a look at myself and what was going on, and my overall projects, cash flow, and I said, hey, I need a job, and I need connections, and I need a network. I need proof of concept. I was tired of people in Cincinnati not knowing my background and the large-scale multi-million-dollar projects I did in Portland and not having that local portfolio. So I reached out to a firm by the name of Terex Development and Construction, which is an entity at Messer. They had a small team, but did big business, and I called with a direction. They said they hadn't had anybody like me call with a purpose in that regard. I knew who to speak to, what I was trying to do. I set up a meeting, and we just continued conversation. You know, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I had a lot of coffee those few months. But it progressed into a job opportunity where I was their second project manager. They were 2 years in inception, and I knew, I was like, oh, this company's rising. Let me hop on now. Let me have a big impact. So I led projects like it was mine. You showed up to a job site, you would be confused not seeing that I was the one running it, and I'm reporting directly to ownership, and they're not coming to my job sites on a daily basis. So I ran multi-million jobs for a while, did some local large companies, did a hospital in Indiana, and towards the end of my term at Terex, Rob was coming in, he was putting together a couple deals, and yeah, I was in that back conference room. We were growing as a company, and we had just put together the conference room, and I was putting on code base. But that shows you as well, it's like, no matter where you're at, if the job needs to get done, get it done. You see what I'm saying? So I was in the office, I was putting code base on, and here comes Robert Sanders, this man who I was calling my mom. Mom, I can't wait, I gotta meet Robert Sanders, he's doing it, you know. I'm so like happy to be here and see other people who look like me and they're doing this and doing that. And he comes into the office, I'm on my knees putting code base on.
Literally boxing yourself in.
I really boxed myself in, but I wasn't scared to speak up. And Robert's a stand-up guy. You guys may not all know him, but I'll say if you want to have a conversation with Rob, speak to him. He's a real, genuine, authentic professional and person. And so we developed a relationship from there, and we've been hitting it off ever since. And yeah, it's been a great path.
I appreciate that, Kai, and thank you for that response. Now, Renee, if I'm not mistaken, you've been an entrepreneur longer than any of us up here and have more of a grassroots sort of background, which, this being an entry level into development. Why don't you talk a little bit about, your path, if you will? And I know I'm putting you on the spot and you have no preparation, but.
It's okay. So yeah, my path is a little bit different. I did not major in real estate at all. I started as a realtor and in property management. And that's how I began my journey through real estate. Originally, my husband and I, when I were married, we started the legacy, right? We started purchasing real estate, South Carolina, Maryland, and Virginia. And then a few years later, he had passed away, and I decided to continue that legacy, and it helped me go through the grieving process. So this is the reason why I continued with real estate. It kept me focused. And I knew that the banks wasn't paying me nowhere near what my rental property would pay me. And I was buying properties back in 2008 when the market was, really down. And in here in Cincinnati, because I'd moved back to Cincinnati. So I was getting properties for like 10 grand, 14 grand, multi-units for 18 grand. And I still have some of those properties. So that's basically where I started, and then I did a bunch of rehab stuff here in Cincinnati, and I transitioned. And that's when I transitioned into development and short-term rental. So to kind of make it short, it's been a span of over 20 years. I've been in real estate in many different aspects of it. But that's kind of where I went. I know it's not as long as what you guys had to offer, but just to make a long story short, that's kind of where I started and how I ended up to where I am now.
Awesome, and I think, the one thing, even though it was a short response, I think one thing that stands out is, folks say, how do I get into, the development space? And a lot of times when people ask me, I'll communicate, hey, just get a job in the industry. And actually during COVID, I got my brokerage license just because I knew being in development, I'd stumble across opportunities to list properties. But I also had my wife get her realtor's license as well, because you just stumble across opportunities and you just never know who you're going to meet. And so you being a realtor, I'm sure, that actually exposed you to a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I had my real estate license in Maryland, Virginia, and then when I moved to Ohio, I had them here in Ohio. So, and then I have properties in like, I think 6 different states total, throughout my career. So yeah, starting from being a realtor, it definitely opened my eyes to the investment part. But honestly, I did not like real estate sales, so I would not do that. That wasn't for me. I realized that after the 3rd time getting my license. I was like, you know what, it's just not for me. But it's not for everybody, so you can find different avenues to find your, what you enjoy.
Awesome. So, Michael, I have an idea. When you think about, the ideation phase of development, and internally we call it the conceptual phase. We have 5 different phases of our development process, but conceptual is, I just got an idea. I don't know what to do next. Can you talk about the steps and considerations that are taken when you have an idea in the development space?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rob. I would say just trying to think about it, and maybe I would actually put that in 5 steps as well. Number 1 is I have an idea, great. So where do you consider having that place? Location is everything. And once you have the idea, do as much as homework you can do on it. In real estate, we say that's the due diligence phase, but what you're really doing is, what are all the known factors that I can continue to learn? And those are things like, hey, if I'm thinking about building a multifamily building, let me check zoning and see if that can be built there. Or let me look into what's the ownership. So the first step I would say is identify your location, what's your scope of work, but also, do your homework. Number 2 is identify your team. As a real estate developer, we don't sit here and do all the work by ourselves. It takes a full scope of team where you're working with your architect if you need one. Who's your general contractor? There's a legal work that needs to be performed on getting acquisition of the property. So I would say number one, location. Number two, assemble your team. And then number three, you want to start to eliminate risk by identifying the cost of the project. So, hey, I found a house, I want to rehab it, I got my GC, got all those different players involved. How much is this thing going to cost? And identifying that so you can really get true to what is this project I'm getting myself into. And then step 4, I would say, is really identify what is your business plan / what is the critical path to get from step 1 to step, to the final step. That's like identifying what is your critical path. How am I going to get the financing for the project? How long is the project going to take? Is it going to take 5 months, or after I talk to my folks, it's actually going to be 12 to 18 months of construction? And then from there, step 5 is, you have your plan, you have your team, execute the plan. So I would maybe lay it out in that form.
So you said two things that I'm gonna piggyback on. You mentioned two words, due diligence, and then you also mentioned team. If you would elaborate a little bit on what due diligence is, in case folks might not know what that is, and then secondly, speak to the importance of the team as it relates to development, because a lot of times there's a misconception. I mean, to be quite candid, I'm sure, Kai, you've walked in rooms, and I've walked in rooms, and the capacity question comes up. And a lot of people really don't understand that development is one of the most leveraged roles that you can play, because you've got partners and everything like that. So elaborate on the importance of that and talk a little bit about the due diligence piece.
Absolutely. So I'll start with the due diligence piece. And I think in the first panel that we had today with the port, they kind of alluded to like, hey, we want to make sure, at the end of the day, you want to set yourself up for success. So with that, I like to get to a quick no so I can get to a yes. But through that, when I say due diligence, I'm in my scale, that's like doing a market study on a project. So I'm like, hey, if I think I want to rent this, or let me back up. So say if I want to rehab a single family home and I want to sell it for X amount, well, do we know if that amount can actually get sold in that market? So maybe at that point, let me look at the comps in the area, or where are other houses being sold in the area? Is there environmental issues that I need to be aware of? That might increase the cost, and that might shift. One of the things that with real estate development, you have to maintain that flexibility, because you might do all your homework in the context of how much it's going to cost, are there environmental issues, is there a retaining wall that I need to fix, and really narrowing down. At the beginning, it's a big funnel with a lot of different factors involved, and as you get step by step, you're narrowing down to, okay, this is my actual project that I can move forward with. So eliminating unknown factors, when I mean due diligence in a long-winded way to say. And then team. So when I say team, what I mean by that is, your different buckets of how we're going to get this project done. Like I was joking earlier, but I'm not out there swinging hammers, right? So that means I need to have a general contractor on my team. So when I have a site, I'm walking through that site with my general contractor, and I say, hey, Kai, what do you think about that? Is this going to be a big cost? Do we need to do this? Can we eliminate this wall, do open concept? And then also that goes into your design team or your architect. Hey, can we draw this in a way that makes sense? And is it buildable? And then you need to have your financial team. So I would highly recommend, yesterday there was a question like, hey, how many bankers in the room? And I would definitely get to know all the bankers in the room to know where's the money at and how are you going to finance your project. So those are the different elements. Like when I say team, I mean, who's your general contractor? If you need an architect or if that's necessary, who's the lender that you're planning to work with? And then also, if you need a legal team or a lawyer to help with the financial transactions. So that's what I mean by that.
Awesome. So Kai, your background is mainly in construction, which is obviously a critical part of development. How do you create a comprehensive project timeline and milestones that guide your development projects? Like, talk a little bit about that process, and also talk about how you help developers that maybe don't have that skill set execute on something like that as a partner like, Michael was just describing?
So comprehensive timelines and one more time.
Comprehensive timelines and how you actually work with, developers like myself even that, don't have that GC skill set, which is critical
Yep.
to understanding the timeline on a development project.
Yep. So one of those things is honestly just experience, right? So you have to go through it to understand it, and not at a topical level, but all the layers of it. Every project is different. A renovation is going to be different than a new build. A masonry built project is going to be different than a stick build, So just understanding the type of project first and foremost, and then I would also say lead by listening. When you're in that room with that team, you put together a team for a reason, right? So incorporate that team's understanding of the development project into your project schedule and project type as far as understanding the components. Different projects are going to have different funding resources. That's where Rob comes in, right? So it's like, we were bouncing ideas a while back about TIF financing, right? So then I was like, all right, I haven't done a TIF project. Who do I go talk to? Let me go talk to the city. They're the ones who released TIF. Let me go talk to this legal team. They specialize in putting this together. Let me go talk to this person, that person. You pull all that information together, you document it, you remain organized, and you bounce ideas off of each of them. You fact check. Oh, you said 3 to 5 months for this. Oh, you said 1 to 2 months for this. Oh, this was 1 week. And you have to write it down. Get used to using Microsoft Project, Excel, Smart Sheets. I personally love Smart Sheets. I'm one of those tech guys. It's like anything that's new that I can integrate and kind of cloud-based, I love, right? I give you no excuse. Your phone is not working, it's on your computer. It's on your computer, it's on your iPad, But definitely I would say pull those resources together, understand them, hear them out, and apply it to the project, and understand that every project's different. So you might have the fundamentals and the backbone of a project, but you're going to have to be flexible and tweak and mold it to that project's needs. And that's one of the things that I would say, like, as far as like integrating that with project partners, that's key.
Can you repeat, just for the audience who didn't get to write it down, those the technical software pieces that are out there? And then also too, you mentioned the city, and that really stood out to me as I was listening to you talk. Can you talk about how to leverage, if you will, how you've leveraged the resources that the city has? Because a lot of times newer developers, even me starting out, I didn't know that actually the city will literally walk you through a lot of different things. They can't answer everything, but they're really good starting points. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
All right. So
And the software
yeah,
programs.
first and foremost, the software. So Microsoft Project, it's kind of like just a general business scheduling software across numerous industries. So that's like one of the basics. Excel is used as well, but I would say it's probably a step down from Microsoft Project as far as the details and the collaboration. And one of the newer ones that I've recently really implemented throughout my company is Smart Sheets. And honestly, it was through a client relationship. I was working on a larger development, $100 million plus. The firm I was working with, they hired us to do pre-development services, and they needed to organize the pre-development process, and they were used to using Smart Sheets. So I adapted, I heard them out, and I implemented. And beyond that project specific, I saw the power of Smart Sheets, so I implemented it throughout my whole organization. So yeah, those ones are 3 products that I would recommend. And then beyond that, you mentioned navigating the city.
Just how you've leveraged it.
Oh, how
folks could potentially leverage this.
Oh yeah, so definitely understand the resources within the city. I would say right now is a wonderful time to be in development and construction in the city of Cincinnati. So we definitely have to give the city kudos in that regard, because they have a lot of products that support housing, a lot of products that even support businesses. Right now there's a commercial storefront grant for $20,000 $20,000. So if you know about any commercial storefronts that you're trying to build out or clients trying to build out, it will add value either way. There's other funding sources, and you just have to go online. They have their websites. Whether it's the Department of Development, whether it's economic inclusion, reach out, go down there, get your feet on the ground, go down there. What's it, 805 Central Parkway or something like that. So go down there. I remember when I was doing it personally, I'd be in there, be friendly. Hi, my name's Kai. I'm here to do this. I think I'm doing it right. What information do you have for me? How can I get this through? What's the path of least resistance? And just forming those relationships, following up with those relationships, and understanding, hey, some of these relationships you may not need today, but you may need it tomorrow, a month from now, a year from now, and depending on your business infrastructure, maybe a client may need it. So that's been one of those things where I've been able to leverage relationships for clients and learn while getting paid, just by connecting the dots. So definitely a lot of good resources there.
Awesome. Oh, go ahead.
Do you mind if I add two quick things?
Absolutely.
Just for
too, Renee, if you hear stuff.
Just for the sake of resources and just quickly, Kai really hit on a good point about city sources. So the one source that I want to make sure everyone knows or is aware of is the Notice of Funding Availability. It's the NOFA for short. That is a financial resource that the city has. Typically, they put the funding out once a year. This year is actually 2 rounds of funding sources where you can apply up to $1 million for your real estate project. I believe you need 4 units or more to qualify for that, but that's on that website that Kai mentioned. And also the city has a tax abatement program where as you do a renovation, you can get 10 years of free tax abatement on your project. So I just want to throw that out there real quick.
Yeah, that tax abatement is huge. Whether it's you holding the property or you selling the property. I remember the property that I purchased from Renee, I got that tax abatement. Those end users loved it. I sold one first day on market. The second one, since I had the first one as a model unit, the second one was sold prior to me even finishing it. People wanted to come into the community. It was right by Walnut Hills High School, brand new rehab property, and little to no taxes, 10 years. And to be honest, you don't even have to stay there the whole time. You can sell it, and then as that end user, the second end user will then have another benefit when they sell it because it's transferable. So that's a great point.
That was a great project, by the way. I did walk through it. I don't know if you know
No,
that,
I didn't know.
yeah, I walked through it. I was like, okay, yeah, he did it. He did
Thank
his
you.
thing on this one.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of chime in about the team your team is extremely important. Just making sure you get the right team, because there are times that we think we have developed or cultivated a good team and very well capable people, and it doesn't work out. I have been in that situation, and it is not good at all. So making sure that you know your team, you're getting people who complement or what you know or what you don't know, they can bring in, what they can bring to the table. So that's extremely important. Vet them very, very well.
And when you guys talk about team, because again, that's a pretty important part of the conversation, and making sure you have the right team. Can you talk a little bit about formal agreements and role clarity with those teams? And that's for any of you guys, because that's an important part of the process too.
I can touch on that. So one of the biggest things in my career growth, working for different size companies, I was very aware of the teams involved, right? So when you're working for like a larger government organization, you had a huge team, right? And honestly, in one of those organizations, it was split like a union shop and a non-union shop. So there's a lot of politics going on. I realized that wasn't the best team for me. Then there's the small business team where it's more mom and pop, homegrown, whether I worked for them or worked with them. There's a different dynamics because as an owner operator, when they're down, the company's down, right? And then there's those mid-sized shops that they're less than a dozen, but it's not 1 or 2, and they really maximize on the value of each team member. And I figured that was the type of shop that was the best fit for me. And kind of playing off of what Rob spoke to previously on capacity, I realized in my role and the business that I was trying to build, the clients I was trying to get, the projects I was trying to take on, I needed a team. So I had to formalize that team. When I first started off, it was all independent contractors, and I'm sure we all know what that is, right? So you might work with me, but you're not a true employee, right? But then I realized, okay, what type of talent pool did I want to tap into? You know, speaking to what Renee said, like vetting your team, making sure your team's, knowledgeable in aspects where you may not be or add value to what you already may know. But I was very aware that I needed true employees and I needed to attract qualified employees. So my previous company, here's another gem I'll drop, my previous company, Terex, they had an HR team outside, right? Small business doing big work, but they outsourced their HR to another team who was, elite at what they did, HR services. So you carry on a whole conversation with me. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm looking to hire you, blah, blah, blah. And then I put you in touch with Rebecca at Employee Management Services. She handles it all from there. I can focus on construction and development, right? Because that team, in organizing that relationship, setting a clear role, job description, company benefits, 401k, healthcare, dental, those are important to putting together a true team, especially for my experience of employees, because I had to offer them a competitive package because being in a minority business, having to compete with some of these more established firms is like, how am I going to get the right project manager, project engineer, superintendent when I can't even say anything besides, hey, I want to hire you an independent contract? Like, that's not going to work. That's not at the level or tier of what we're trying to do. So I had to put together that team in some things that were auxiliary to the construction management development, and even HR services,
Awesome. So Renee, you've obviously completed a couple successful projects along the way. For the folks in the room, can you just talk a little bit about how you handle just having an idea to, all right, I'm going to execute on this thing and get it done, and just literally talk about even the bumps and the bruises as it relates to that. And I'll share one. When I first got started the company, I had site control over a single family property, and I said, all right, I'll just do some flips until I land a larger development deal. I went through 3 contractors on that thing, and I decided I was no longer going to do flips. And so, it's just a learning process. And so just talk a little bit about that, if you will.
I mean, coming from an idea, I always have ideas, and then I'm like, okay, let's execute. I mean, some of my friends are like, you're always doing something. But, I think that what the question was, let me make sure I answer you right.
Just how you handle ideas, because, again, folks in the audience may just have an idea, and they may not know where to go, and just talk about sort of that process too.
Okay.
And if you want, you can use actually a specific, flip or Airbnb or whatever.
So, well, with the development that I did, I literally, after selling Kai that property, I actually regretted selling him that property.
I didn't.
Yeah, I was like, oh shoot, now what am I gonna do? So then I went looking for another property that I can flip, and I came across the land, and it had these amazing views, and I was just like, oh, and I was with my friend, my realtor at the time, Micah, and I was like, okay, I guess I should just build. It just kind of landed in my lap like that, and I was like, from there, I was like, all right, I'm going to get the land. We couldn't get in contact with the realtor. So that was a process. Trying to find him, trying to get the land under contract. And once I got the land under contract, I was like, okay, so this is now, it's happening. It's happening. I had already had the design ideas in my head. Anytime I come across a property, I already design it before I know how much it's going to cost. I don't know, it's just a thing. So from there, I just started putting things together and putting the pieces together, and I was like, oh, we're going to do it. And, anytime you want to do something, when there's a will, there's a way, you'll always figure out how to get it done. But again, from there, I started to assemble a team and got in contact with an architect and came up with some design, and he came up with his own design, and I was like, no, that's not going to work, and we had to go to the drawing board a few times. And but that's just part of the process. Whenever you think that you want to do something, it's just really executing and getting to that space where, like, okay, I'm going to get this, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it done.
Yeah, and
you figure out, you just basically figure out how to get it done. You know, sometimes you just got to figure that out. You talk to other people, and they may be able to contribute in some ways, some ideas, you know, and then get in contacts through the city or whatever.
That's a good segue into the next question, and this is for any one of you guys, is, not every idea obviously, comes to fruition. We probably look at, 20 deals in 60 days, and, one may actually happen. So can you talk a little bit about how you look at an idea and then you refine it, and, sometimes it dies, but just talk a little bit about that process for the folks in the audience.
Yeah, I'll just really say half of being in this space is problem solving, and just really when I say my day-to-day is problem solving and having issues and trying to figure it out. So part of that, and I think it was touched with the last response was really smart, because really the theme that I heard was being flexible and the being creative on that. So sorry, I want to make sure I answer your question.
Just process refine.
So process refine. So I typically, when I have an idea, I don't hold it in the bottle. I kind of like talk, going back to my, like similar to the question that, response would say, like, hey, I have this idea. Let me actually run this by the architect. And then, how do we get to that middle ground, how we're moving forward on the same project? But it just goes back to your team, right? So I'm going to ask my GC, hey, I want to do this. Is this buildable? Can we do this? So that's why I think the common theme of today's conversation is having your team, so you can vet your ideas and get to a quick no, we can't do this, or it's a no, but if we do these different things, this is how we can maneuver the space to get to what you want to do at the end of the day. So I have crazy ideas all the time, and I say, hey, what do you guys think about this? And sometimes it could be a no, sometimes it's like, hey, let's figure out what the right solution is and work around that. So good response.
Yeah, I would just add on to that in the sense of, being flexible and remaining solution-based is key, because I heard you guys say it earlier, it's like we're problem solving every day, and you're not going to have the solution single-handedly to every problem. So it's a matter of understanding your resources, your network, and putting those pieces of the puzzle together, because, somebody may have more experience with like a LIHTC product than I may, right? And there's so many different tools and resources. You're not touching it every day, right? So just being able to put those things together and remain solution-based is key. But one thing I want to speak to is the opposite side of that, which is not being emotionally attached to the project or idea, right? You can head down the wrong path just because, you had some connection to this property that was personal, and it's just like, I have to make it happen. No, you don't. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes every development is not a good development opportunity, and a lot of people see the upside of development and they see the people making money and numerous properties. Sit down and have a lunch with them and let them tell you how many failures they had. You see what I'm saying? Or what their failures were. I guarantee you some of that is being emotionally attached to the project. It's a numbers game. You see what I'm saying? Does a pro forma calculate profit? And what does that capital stack look like? What's grants? What's loans? Is the project feasible? Are you going to have to go through a coordinated site review with 3 planning commission meetings, 6 to 9 months? Do you have the holding costs? Is the property owner who's selling it to you even willing to put it out on a contract like that? Do they even have the capacity to go through all of that? They may not. So you have to know when to just remove yourself from it as well.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And the one thing I want to point out from what they said was, and this is important in development, like, don't kill your own idea. Like, have some conversations with potential partners and go through the process of vetting your idea, because you'd be surprised at how many things actually happen from just a crazy idea that nobody thought could actually happen. I was told we got a few minutes left, and so I want to leave a little bit of time to answer a few questions, if there's some questions from the audience for anyone on the panel. It's hard to see you, so you got on red, I think, or burgundy, sitting right there?
Here?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yes. So you had mentioned a fund that is doing grants for this type of work through the city, and I did not get the name. You said you had to have like 4 properties.
Oh, that's Michael. Yeah, the NOFA.
So it's through the city of Cincinnati, and it's called the Notice of Funding Availability. NOFA for short, and I believe they have a round B coming up in October, in a couple weeks actually. And you have definitely triple checks. I don't think it's a you have a great interest rate, but I think it's a loan versus it's not a grant on that.
There was another question back there. Ed? Oh,
I just had a question. You guys kept mentioning team. I've never done a development in my life. So like as a start, like having team members, do I need or what do I need as a team or to start a team to develop a project?
If you're just starting out and it's not like a concrete thing that you've done already, I would start with outsourcing your team. You're going to have to network within the industry. I would suggest, becoming a member of different organizations or groups. Just get in a place where you're rubbing shoulders with other like-minded professionals, and then you're going to understand, who is available for the project type that you're trying to go after, and where you have those natural synergies. But I think first and foremost, put yourself in a light where you have a concrete idea and story of what you're trying to do, so that when you're in the room with those people, you can communicate, hey, I'm looking for an architect, I'm looking to build a single family house, or hey, I'm looking for a contractor who specializes in multifamily development, or hey, I'm looking for a financer who does investment lending. So you knowing what you're trying to do will help you determine who your team is.
I want to add on to that. When Kai kind of mentioning like, hey, what are different groups, or just in terms of networking piece, there's an organization in town called the Urban Land Institute, and they have a program called the Real Estate Accelerator Lab, designed specifically for minority developers who are interested, various different levels of where you're at. And it's a 9-month course, and I would highly recommend you participating in it, because going back to Kai, that's how I kind of met Kai, was through the Real program. I see a lot of Real program, Real alumni in the room today as well, but that's like a great source for you to kind of like dip your toe in and hearing like, hey, what is this real estate process? Because really, it's like step one, but there's multiple mini steps under every single step as you get through. And then I want to go back to that previous question I just had, because I just also want to throw out the Cincinnati Development Fund also is a great resource for financial tools for your project. So definitely look out for funding that they have available.
questions? I can start. So from a contractor standpoint, my focus is really commercial, and I can underwrite the hell out of a commercial contractor because I manage loans that had a construction component. So it was my responsibility to, on behalf of our borrowers, to actually be able to underwrite the GC to determine if they were doing overbillings or underbillings, to make sure they were financially stable. And so that's more technical. However, just from a relationship standpoint, I was in a situation where it's kind of sad because it was like a nonprofit GC, but it wasn't a good situation. So just really take time and in my mind, sometimes you have an ego. Oh, it's a little flip. I can manage it. It was probably the hardest project I ever did. But that being said, ask around, get some references, and Cincinnati is a small enough city where you can ask 2 or 3 people, and they're gonna tell you if they had a good experience or not, and just don't be afraid to ask direct questions. And then also too, the last question asked about how did you pick your team? Don't be afraid to actually work with other aspiring developers that are trying to get into space, because they're going to bring tools and skill sets to the table that maybe you don't have, that you don't necessarily have to outsource, and they're going to have equally as much sweat into the project, and so that's always good. But still do the same thing: vet them, ask direct questions, and just be upfront, and don't be afraid to say no or this situation doesn't really work.
And just to quickly add to that, thinking about like, hey, what is your experience or what is your proof of concept for example, on some project I'm working on, like, hey, if this is a historic rehab that I'm working on, does the GC do that type of work, or are you kind of communicating with the correct GC? Like, is that general contractor mainly doing commercial development and not really in the single family space? So one of the things is you just want to ask, like, hey, what type of experience do you have in the form of what are some of your current and past projects that you could show me, or ask for a walkthrough. On that walkthrough. Back at the port, some of that part of that research is, hey, I know you said you did this project in the past. Did you pull permits from the city of Cincinnati? Like this basic stuff, like treat it as like an interview almost to make sure it's a good match for what you're looking for.
Yeah, well, we're out of time, everyone. Could you guys give our panel a hand? Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Kai. Thanks, Renee, for stepping in. And I think they'll be available for questions after this, too, so don't hesitate to approach them and ask whatever questions you need. These guys can be a really good resource for anyone in the room. Thank you.